emerging trends, or 11 emerging trends in GIS. Scott is an Esri solution engineer, helping tailor ArcGIS offerings to meet state government agencies' needs. He specializes in geospatial infrastructure, including ArcGIS Enterprise, web services, cloud infrastructure, and data migration. Everyone, I just want to briefly, just before we get too involved here, I want to make sure everybody's aware of all of the social times. Please take a moment to look at your agenda to see the 5 o'clock social today. Participate in the survey for recipes. That was pretty cool. If you haven't seen that, shout out and we can help you with that. If you have any questions, enter them in the chat window and we'll hit those up at the end. So without any further ado, we'll turn it over to Scott.
All right, thank you, Scott. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
Perfect, well, thank you so much. Again, my name is Scott MacDonald. I am an Esri solution engineer, and I am really happy to be joining you all today. I came from the ArcGIS Enterprise development team at the beginning of this year to become a solution engineer for state government. So my background, again, is kind of on the infrastructure side of things, and I've been privileged to be able to view quite a lot of different ends of the GIS world and the ArcGIS platform. So what I'd like to talk about today is 10 trends that I've been seeing and that Esri has been really diving into in 2021. And this is not intended to be just a for the cutting edge. These trends are being used by organizations of all kinds, of all shapes and all sizes. And it's really not just about what is the most state of the art, but is what is really being trending among the organizations that we work with every day. So hopefully there's something in here that will pique your interest. My first big trend is about cloud, and it is about cloud infrastructure. Now, cloud is some big data warehouse, some server building factory somewhere in the world that you're renting a piece of a machine from. So you're paying for the machine that you rent. You're paying for the services that you're working with. And in that way, we're talking about consumption-based GIS budgets. Now, where infrastructure was previously a really limiting factor for organizations, we're seeing cloud adoption really change what organizations can do, particularly the smaller shops. Agencies that may not be able to stand up and continue working with GIS on a big server machine can now rent, through the cloud, be able to achieve exactly what they need it for. And that makes scalability a really big new term for organizations. The ability to scale up and down as they need it, as their traffic demands require it, and be able to pay exactly what they're using it for. A great example that kind of brings that all together is the new ArcGIS image for ArcGIS Online product. Now, this is essentially the same abilities that you get from ArcGIS Image Server, which is a part of ArcGIS Enterprise, a server machine dedicated to running your imagery. Your hosting, analyzing, sharing, streaming, all of that is now possible within ArcGIS Online, where you're not responsible for maintaining any of the infrastructure. You're only paying for what you're using. And that makes it a cloud-native imagery workstation. So whether you need to stream intelligent tile maps to use in your workflows, or you're doing dynamic analysis of imagery with mosaic and raster collections, that really changes the game for a lot of users. Now, I'll be talking on Thursday in a different session about ArcGIS Image and ArcGIS Online, and so I invite you to join me there. My next trend is about interoperability, and it is about acknowledging that we work in an open data world. We work in a connected data world. And I know open might be an ironic word to use for Esri, which is a private company doing proprietary GIS. But I think the open is more about embracing the flexibility that is increasingly becoming part of GIS work, particularly for ArcGIS, for GIS developers, pardon me. So that might mean extensibility and customization. It could mean using certain open standards. It could mean about integrating your architecture so that you're working with the rest of your IT components in your organization. And an example of openness that we're seeing is states in the state government sector are increasingly setting up these collaborative hubs, open data geoportals, data clearinghouses, whatever you might call it. States around the country have been using ArcGIS Hub to make their geospatial data, a lot of it, available to the public. And you know, this is a huge benefit for anyone who needs to use that kind of data. You never know what kind of data applications people are looking for that open data with. And that's all about putting the data in people's hands. So what we see is that GIS developers are working in a web of data and services, of connected open data, big data with their own data, and working with different APIs, working in different sectors for different reasons. But what they need is a simple platform that brings it all together for them. So what Esri did earlier this year was introduce the ArcGIS Platform. And it's a retooling of our developer offerings with openness and flexibility being the key. So whether you're using ArcGIS tools and applications, ArcGIS APIs, or open source or third-party APIs like the Mapbox GL.js, you can now use all of that together in the same system with all of that, reducing the friction that comes with working with either Esri or third-party or open source data, APIs, tools, applications, and services. So the platform is a really simple, transparent, consumption-based pricing model for developers. And it offers you everything from the base maps and a lot of new vector and raster base maps, geocoding and routing tools, the location services that power your operations, but in the cloud. So you know, based on your consumption, a lot of open data, and the ability for you to bring in, whether it's a state's geoportal collaborative hub or a company's private data or open publicly available data. And of course, the ability to do spatial analysis with all of it. It's a really fantastic way of presenting an open platform for GIS developers. And what I really appreciate as a former documentation writer is that the ArcGIS developer documentation is fantastic. From conceptual guides to detailed API references, sample notebooks, sandboxes, tutorials. It's all really important, no matter where you are, where your learning curve is, to using GIS development tools. My next trend is about field work, field operations. Now, you know, this isn't a new concept, moving your paper data collection to digital. But we're really seeing an increased demand for a common operating picture where field workers and GIS analysts and business supervisors are all working together in the same platform so that they can view what's going on and see where they fit into that system. What Esri has done in the last year is try to bring in what were previously 5 separate apps, Collector, Explorer, Tracker, Navigator, and Workforce, that if you're using all of them, you have to have 5 different apps on your phone. They all work a little differently. And we're integrating that into a single app called ArcGIS Field Maps. Now, there'll be a session later in the conference where a colleague of mine will be talking about field maps. But what it is, it's a single app that integrates all of your field work operations. The GIS analysts are able to configure the focused, pre-configured look and feel of the map and the forms that your field workers are using. Supervisors can track and understand where their workers have been and where they need to go and to assign them new work. And GIS analysts are able to receive the data immediately as soon as it's uploaded and to be able to work with it starting right away. My next trend is about digital twins. Now, this is a big buzzword in the world. If you follow tech, you might have heard about this new metaverse thing. Esri is not trying to get into the metaverse field, but we are really making it easier for organizations to build digital twins that are able to help them understand the history of their assets, represent and monitor the reality, the present, and then to be able to calibrate and adjust for the future. Now, what is a digital twin? It is a virtual representation in high fidelity of physical objects and systems. It may be a pipeline. It may be a building. It may be a campus. A good example is a culvert. A culvert is a pipe, but it's also a line that's connected on either end by 2 points. It's part of a natural system of water flow. It's also part of an engineered system, and it underlies a road or some other transportation line. You can't work on a culvert without understanding the natural systems, the engineered systems, what's going on the road or railroad. You have to understand the relationships between things. And so digital twins is about bringing all that together and modeling the relationships and processes that happen in the real world. Some fantastic examples of digital twins lately. It may be that your city, such as Boston, they set up a complete 3D model and made it publicly available on an open data hub to be able to view every single building in the city in its 3D footprint. The Amsterdam Schiphol Airport created a full digital twin where every chair, every electrical box, every pipe is modeled so that when they need to do maintenance or fulfill a work order, they understand everything that's being affected by that work. Perhaps the coolest example is the Long Island Railroad is doing a complete station renovation construction, the Jamaica station. And they built a 5D digital twin. Now it's a 3D map. They can do everything that a 3D map can do, pan and zoom, fly around. They added the fourth dimension of time, where they're able to understand if we build it here or if we put this crew here, this is what they'll be able to do in time. And then the fifth dimension is cost. If I work on this system, I might incur this cost elsewhere. So that 5D digital twin is a fantastic way for them to understand and save time and money when they're doing their work. Now, digital twins are all about advancing across the GIS platform. When you're talking about digital twins, you're typically using a 3D model, and we're making it better and more able to use really high fidelity 3D modeling capabilities. You're often doing indoor mapping, where you're bringing in CAD data and your BIM, your building information model, and you need to integrate that into your digital twin. You're often using sensor networks that are connected to the Internet of Things, where you need to understand real-time GIS to be able to calibrate and adjust your digital twin in real time. And you're bringing together all this data and all these components. You need to automate tasks. And so that's where geospatial artificial intelligence comes in. So these next 5 trends that I'll be talking about all kind of feed in to the digital twin advancement. We've really been seeing 3D come of age. 3D is not just a novelty anymore for GIS, but is increasingly a vital part of a GIS system of record. We've really improved the meshes, the integrated meshes and the 3D feature layers that you can use in ArcGIS and in the ArcGIS platform. Really, the math has changed. It's become a lot easier and more affordable for organizations of all kinds to implement 3D, in particular to use 3D as their foundational system of record. Whether it's faster data collection and processing through drone imagery that directly feeds into your GIS, the ability to host massive collections of imagery in the cloud, and doing that without the heavy storage costs that has traditionally been associated with 3D and 3D imagery. This is how you get 3D systems of record that are available to more organizations. We can see 3D coming of age when we are able to do visualizations such as this one, where you have a city with a very good digital twin of its different systems, and then you're able to do on-the-fly visualization of different flood scenarios, and to be able to understand how flood scenarios, a 100-year flood or a 500-year flood, will impact the city and its different systems. This is not just 3D as a novelty. This is doing important work and analysis and visualization using an integrated 3D model. A big part of 3D is the idea of reality capture, which is a simple way of saying really high resolution modeling. Reality capture is often done through drones or through LiDAR, laser scanning. And if you're using drones, I really hope that you made it yesterday to Chase Fisher, to my colleague Chase's session yesterday, covering site scan and how to get started with drone processing. Reality capture is about getting a 3D model that is sharper than just an as-built drawing. It's more current than what you have in your CAD or BIM data, and it is faster than manually measuring and understanding the systems that are there. It's using automated tools to build a 3D model that lets you work with your digital twin. Esri recently acquired a German company called N-Frames, which makes a product called Sure. And Sure is all about 3D surface reconstruction, really fine textured meshes and point clouds that come from imagery and LiDAR and drone data and traditional GIS data. And the product that Esri and Sure are working on together is really going to be cutting edge and, of course, directly integrated to your GIS, bringing in your different ways of collecting data and producing fantastic, really true to life digital representations of physical space. The next trend is all about what's kind of often been the final frontier for GIS. We've been able to map outdoor things forever, but what about indoors? And you know, ArcGIS Indoors has been around for a few years now, and it's an indoor mapping tool. And when it first came out, I kind of thought that is a really niche product. I mean, maybe a large airport or a really big campus might want to be able to map its indoor facilities. But especially with COVID changing how indoor spaces operate, we've seen a huge level of interest from organizations of all kinds in the state and local government sector, different state agencies and private businesses. People want to be able to map their space and to integrate their facility management into their GIS. When you have GIS as part of your work order system, your ticketing, your hot desking or space reservation system, it makes things a lot easier to visualize and it makes things more efficient to get done. And I'll be remiss if I didn't mention GIS and the integration of GIS and BIM. So Esri and Autodesk, which is the maker of AutoCAD, BIM 360, they have been partnering for a few years now to produce what's going to be called ArcGIS GeoBIM. And this is a full integration of GIS and BIM and CAD data into a product that helps you go from end to end when it comes to your facilities. Not just be able to review, to turn your CAD drawings and your blueprints into life in digital twin mockups, but also be able to work through the construction phase into facility management to work on issues when people are reporting different work orders, to understand performance and to understand, to bring in sensor networks to understand how things are going throughout your facilities. ArcGIS GeoBIM is really going to change things for organizations of all kinds who need to have that integration through their systems. Heavily connected to that is the idea of real-time GIS. The Internet of Things is the term that we use, that tech uses for this internet of connected sensors around the world. There are estimates from everything from 10 billion sensors in production right now to 25 billion sensors. You know, in 10 years, there will be 50 billion sensors. Most of these sensors are not workstations. They're not doing processing. They're not doing analysis, spatial analysis, and they're not making maps. They're not visualization. They're simply collecting data about the temperature of your fridge, or the speed of your truck, or the battery life remaining on your well, or whatever it is. And it's collecting that data from the edge and sending it into a hub. And this is all about bringing in all that data and ingesting it in real time to make sense of it and to be able to recalibrate your operations on the fly. We need to set our AC into motion because the sensor told us that the temperature in our room is too hot. Or whatever it may be, real-time GIS is all about feeding in and making a smart, intelligent hub to adjust on the fly to make your operations more efficient and smarter. So we've had ArcGIS GeoEvent Server for a while. GeoEvent Server is a server-based real-time data processing GIS tool that sits within ArcGIS Enterprise. It gives you situational awareness, real-time analytics and processing, and the ability to alert when you have an anomaly or a high criticality event or some sort. But in the last year, we've introduced ArcGIS Velocity, which is, again, a cloud-native add-on for ArcGIS Online. So just like ArcGIS Image and just like the ArcGIS Platform, it is bringing the ability to do cloud-based, consumption-based GIS into your system. So more organizations can make use of real-time GIS and make use of their sensor networks, of their Internet of Things. ArcGIS Velocity is cloud native, which gives you the ability to scale up and down as your sensor network grows and changes. You do on-the-fly visualizing of the data that's coming in and analysis, which allows you to track your sensors, perhaps your system of trucks, your field workers, your system of refrigerators, to be able to monitor what's happening, alert you when things that you know you need to adjust to, perhaps an event that's happening that knows that that is above some threshold, and then allows you to adjust or to let you have the system adjust things automatically to make intelligent decisions about your sensor network and to recalibrate on the fly. ArcGIS Velocity is really going to open up a lot of opportunities for organizations of all kinds to bring their sensor networks into an intelligent system. But when they have all that data, it is hard to have, to do it with human power alone. And that's where GeoAI comes in. So geospatial artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence that has a geospatial component. And there's a whole data science ecosystem that has grown up, making the ability for you to do machine learning, deep learning, and computer vision, and all these different AI techniques to do them in data science. But what can GIS offer AI, and what can AI offer GIS? We've seen examples, if you attend the Esri user conference, you'll see examples of fantastic AI workflows that happen, that they present every year, perhaps identifying every moldy swimming pool in a city, or identifying, every truck that is in your system. Ultimately, GIS shares a lot in common with machine learning. Machine learning is about, preparing a certain subset of data. I want to have a model that uses machine learning to identify cats from dogs. So I show it a bunch of pictures of cats and dogs, and I say, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a dog. And that model makes its own inferences about what a cat is and what a dog is. And once I've trained the model on my preparation data, I let it loose on a system, maybe I have a data set of 1 million pictures of cats and dogs. And that intelligent AI model is able to determine and discern a cat from a dog on a much larger scale, much faster than it would take a team of humans to do the same cat versus dog determination. From that, I am able to work with the insights from my model to be able to do advanced analysis with it, and then to share my results and visualize the results of my machine learning model. That takes that makes it a lot easier to do things like advanced image AI. So GeoAI is often applied to imagery, whether it is object detection or deep learning analysis. I'm able to take a huge imagery data set and label a certain amount of training data and show it to the model. So maybe it needs to recognize buildings of different kinds, or different trees, or different water features. I then set the parameters of the model, and I allow it to learn more about what it is that constitutes a water feature, what it looks like in my imagery, and then let it loose on a much larger data set to infer about features all over the data set and to make its own decisions about what I am wanting it to look for and what I don't want it to look for. With that, I'm able to do immense amounts of analysis, massive amounts of data coming in from my model, and to work with that on the fly. And I can have that feed into my field mobility. Perhaps I'm using a deep learning model to have my field workers go to places that have been automatically detected by an AI model. That is all about making work smarter and more efficient for you by having AI automate the tasks and saving you time. AI has long been a part of GIS, whether we're making predictions about what's going on in the future, finding patterns, clusters and hotspots, detecting anomalies and potential mistakes and errors in my data, or with working with new kinds of data, with LiDAR, point clouds. Esri has a really underrated product called Locate Text, which allows you to work with unstructured text. Maybe it's a military press release or a newspaper article, and to be able to extract locations and addresses from that data and work with it in your GIS. That's all the power of AI, and it is already everywhere in the ArcGIS system. We see headlines that are basically focused on doing massive amounts of data processing automatically in an automated fashion. And the keywords are saving man hours, saving time, automating production, saving effort, and learning doing things that models are able to do faster than humans can or want to do. GeoAI is going to be very important as our data grows, as the amount of things that we need to do with our data grows. Having automated data processing is going to be more and more important with every passing year. So those 6 trends really bring in the importance of what we call digital twins, and whatever that looks like for you and your organization, the abilities, the advancements of 3D and reality capture, real-time, GeoAI, and sensor networks for Internet of Things are going to make it important for every organization to work with their GIS.
Hey, Scott, this is Scott. I hate to do this, but we're going to have to start to wrap it up. We're running a little late already.
Okay.
I can give you about 2 more minutes. So if you can wrap this up pretty quickly. We do have one question, so I may get you and Amanda together after this. So if you could kind of wrap it up.
Absolutely.
We got
sure. So, yeah, absolutely. So my last trend is a little different. It's about storytelling and geojournalism. It's become really important in the last couple of years, especially, that it's become really clear to me that every map tells a story. And as our map products grow and diversify, the things that we do with GIS grows and diversifies and becomes more public. It's really important to understand the storytelling aspect of our mapping. Interactive map products allow users to dive into our stories more than ever before, to dive into our data and what we've done with our data. And we change our GIS products based on who our audience is, based on who the stakeholders are. What connects journalism and storytelling and geography, GIS, is that they both do the work of recording what's there, analyzing why and how, and engaging important stakeholders with it. That means that mapping is narrative work, and we need to be very careful and perceptive about what the stories we are telling with maps are. Geojournalism is a term that we've been talking about at Esri in the last couple of years to bring in the importance of narrative into GIS. Now, we use geojournalism when we make story maps, and story maps are really important. The city of Louisville put a really good racial equity history story map together that I encourage you to view if you haven't already. Story maps bring in journalism, narrative storytelling with maps and interactive progress. But so do dashboards. We see dashboards telling stories and allowing users to dive into the stories more than ever before. We see maps on social media all the time. And the story that the maps tell helps shape our perception of the world and of various issues. And it's really important for journalists to understand and have geospatial literacy when they're presenting the news, when they're doing news graphics and bringing maps into their journalism as well. The map that was heard around the world last year was this Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard. I assume that all of you saw it at some point. And it ultimately is a storytelling device. It allows users to see in real time what is happening, when it's happened, and where it is happening. And to be able to understand the why and the how of COVID-19. When you see something like this, you understand that storytelling has never been as important as it is now to GIS and to what we do, no matter what we're doing and who we're doing it for. Storytelling is a crucial part of what we do and why we're doing it. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions you may have. I really appreciate your time. I know we've been a couple minutes over time, but Scott, I'll hand it over to you.
Do you mind? Amanda had one quick question, and that is, can organizations use Velocity if they have an Esri enterprise platform, or does it require ArcGIS Online? So
Sure.
if you could briefly answer that, or if you would like to get, maybe if you feel it better to maybe contact her in that window.
Sure, very briefly, Velocity is an add-on for ArcGIS Online. It is a cloud-native workstation. It is equivalent to GeoEvent Server in ArcGIS Enterprise. So if you are using ArcGIS Online, you can use Velocity with it and get started by contacting your account manager and adding Velocity into your account. So it works as part of ArcGIS Online.
Great. Thank you very much, Scott. We appreciate you coming out and talking to us today. If anybody else has any questions of Scott, don't hesitate to hit him up after this. And I want to just say thanks to John Woodard for being patient. And we will give me about just a second and we'll get started on our next presentation.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Let me introduce you here real quick. Give everybody a chance to take a deep breath. All right, so let's get started. First and foremost, I hope everybody knows this is Scott Still, Step Row. I'm from Public Works in Louisville Metro. This is session 2, the nuts and bolts of GIS, mixing honeybees, drones, and GIS. Our presenter is John Woodard from Davey Resource Group. He is, as I said, he's known as Woody. He's been working in GIS since 2001. He holds certifications as a GISP and as an enterprise architecture. He also has a master's in geography from the University of Akron, a master's in digital science concentrated in enterprise architecture from Kent State, and has a book on enterprise GIS concepts and applications that was published just this year. The GIS IT program developer for Davey Resource, and is an avid scuba diver, and I suspect a beekeeper as well. So with that, Woody, if you would, sir, take over.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Let me share the screen.
And while he's doing that, let me remind everybody again that didn't hear me during the first session, don't forget about our mapping, the map gallery. Make sure you get your votes in. Can't remember if we can still vote or not, but I think we can. And don't forget about the recipe survey and the socials after each day. Just check your schedule for what's going on.
Okay, is everybody seeing my screen? should be seeing a swarm of honeybees.
Yes, sir. I can see it. Anybody else?
We're good.
All right.
All right, let me rearrange things so it looks like I'm talking to the camera instead of off to one side. That drives me nuts.
I might have said that's a very cool view, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we ready to start then?
Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Go here. All right. So this is the nuts and bolts of GIS 2021, drones, GIS, and honeybees. I did this presentation. I designed it to be live, so we might have a few bumps along the way, but we'll get through it, no problem. So, quick introduction about myself. Hello, my name is John, naturally, but you can call me Woody. I like to keep things informal. Now, I don't have the chat window up, so I'm going to rely on the moderator to let me know if anybody has a quick question. Now, I've been in GIS for about 20 years. I have my GISP. I have the Enterprise Architect certification, which is about designing efficient information flows through an organization. My professional contributions to the field of GIS is a book, Enterprise Concepts for GIS, published January 2020 by CRC Press, and I'm an adjunct professor with the Northeast Ohio Medical University of Richtown, Ohio. I hold an MS in Geography and GIS from the University of Akron, a master's in Digital Science, which is concentrated in Enterprise Architecture from Kent State University, and I guess the new lingo for that is MDS. And then I'm a scuba diver. And yes, I am a beekeeper. It's taken me a while to figure out how to work bees into one of my presentations. Now, if we were live, the note down there is, I have 10 years in the United States Navy Reserve Seabees. And for 9 of those 10 years, I was also a Navy training instructor. So I would project my voice when I answer questions. So I still tend to do that. But if I do that, doesn't mean I'm angry. It just means I'm trying to make sure people in the back end of the room could hear me. But since we're using microphones and computers, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to have no trouble hearing. Now, of course, the slide deck decides to wait. There we go. So there's the slide the publisher makes me put in about the book because I have to help market it. We'll skip over this one real quick, but it's in the slide deck. So here's the humble yet hardworking star of this show is the honeybee. And what we're going to talk about is bringing new technology to bear to help beekeepers. It's called apiculture, which is part of agriculture, survive. So does anybody have any idea why these little critters are so important to the world right now? The honeybees. Anybody want to unmute themselves and just ask or give me an idea, or send it in chat would be good.
Pollinators.
Pollinators, very good. And that's the #1 reason. Move off the slide deck, there we go. So right there, pollination. Honeybees are the best and most prolific pollinators of agricultural crops. Your native bees, they can do it, but they can't do it at the level we need in agriculture to produce crops that will feed a nation. In fact, a USDA study has proven that 1/3 of the food supply depends upon pollination by the honeybee. So if the honeybee goes away, most of those foods you see on the screen will go away with them or become very scarce. The other thing is honey. Honeybees provide an economic return to the area, the farmer, the state, the nation. Honey is an exportable crop. As my daughter will tell you, and she's right there in the picture, it's also very tasty and she loves to help bottle the honey. It is also a natural medicine. Honey itself is an antibiotic because it's so heavy and dense, nothing can live in it. Honey does not spoil. It will ferment and become something called mead, which is, unto itself is quite tasty. But as an economic powerhouse, it can be made into a cough syrup. It can be used for wound dressings. In fact, if you look down there, you see Medi honey. Those are bandages and dressings that are now being applied in hospitals to cover wounds because it's such a natural dressing. It actually, and your body accepts it so much readily, so much quicker than your normal antiseptic medicines, that it is actually being brought back after 1,000 years to dress wounds. Pliny the Elder of ancient Greek talked about dressing battle wounds with honey and moss. And they're discovering today, the historical circle is being completed. Medicine's now turning to honey to help dress the wounds in people who are highly allergic to other types of medicine. Also, it's commercially available over the counter to use this at home. Honeybees also produce beeswax. And beeswax is another economic powerhouse. It is a craft material. It can be used for candles, candies, paints. It is used in heavy industry. It shows up everywhere. In fact, in World War II, it was such a critical war material for lubricant, waterproofing, providing energy to field soldiers, that beekeepers were exempt from the draft, and the United States actually assigned small combat units to patrol the areas of apiaries to prevent anybody from messing with them in areas where intelligence identified a potential threat from saboteurs, whatever you want to call it. So beeswax, honey, it's all incredibly adaptable to things. If it's a food source, it's an economic source. And that's why beekeepers keep bees, because you can make money from it. Not only do you like the little guys, but they help pay for themselves. Only been recently with colony collapse disorder and a couple other things that the world has come to realize how much the world itself depends upon the honeybee. So that brings us to the question, why are honeybees in decline? One, loss of habitat. The small farms that used to really be a perfect biosphere, if you want to call it, for the honeybees, are being lost to development. New housing developments come in, golf courses come in. And when those come in, that leads us to the other problem. Everybody wants a yard now that doesn't have any flowers blooming. They think that a healthy yard looks like a golf course. So they use insecticides, they use pesticides, and they really over apply these to get the plants to look like, when they mow it, it's all a sea of green, no single blossoms, no marigolds, no dandelions, no clover. Then in agriculture, trying to cut costs and control the applications of the chemicals, plants are now being genetically modified to be insect resistant. When they say that, that means the plant itself produces the chemicals in itself to kill insects. And when they do this and a bee pollinates that flower, it carries that insecticide back to the hive, and eventually it will destroy the entire colony. And finally, you have the invasive species, grower mites, small hive beetles. These wreak havoc on a beehive. And not only that, they're a gateway to a lot of viruses that kill bees, because now the bees are weak, defending themselves from these little predators, and they can't defend themselves from the virus and the other predators like wax moths. We're not going to go into that because that's a whole slideshow unto itself. So what tech tools do we have as GIS professionals that can help honeybees? Well, GIS, one, traditional GIS mapping and online mapping, that's big. Drones, the cameras, they're high definition, they're thermal. It all comes together to allow us as GIS professionals working for cities and counties to help support agriculture, specifically honeybees and beekeepers. So we're going to go back here to the basics of GIS. Proximity. What's nearby the honeybee? Are honeybees competing with each other? If I have 20 beehives and bees fly a 5-mile radius, and I find 2 or 3 operations with 20 to 30 hives themselves, That means we have 150 hives in a 5-mile radius in an urban setting or a rural to urban setting. And it's going to be hard for those hives to find enough resources. So we can work together to spread them out so we're not competing for those resources. And then how close are the pollen nectar sources to them? How far must my bees fly? The farther they fly, the faster the wings wear out. So if I can find a source of nectar and pollen nearby, I might move the hive a mile or two. It'll work out better for the bees and me in the flower. Buffer zones. Again, basic GIS. What's the biggest zone I need to protect my hives from trespassers? Where do I need to put signs up saying, hey, bees at work, you will be stung if you pass this line because bees will defend their hives. Overspray from mosquito trucks. I'm not sure how many people, normally at this point, ask how many people work for a county and get a raise of hand. So how many people will raise their hand and tell me that you work for a county or municipality that has a mosquito control program? Okay, I don't see anybody raising hands. But the overspray from those trucks drifting off, there we go, drifting off the roadway, you know, everybody's like, well, it's the right of way, 10 foot. Yeah, but the overspray from the truck might be 10 foot, might be 20 or 30 foot. So you find out what the overspray from those spray nozzles are, and you give it a little tweak for wind, and you tell the beekeeper, if you're 40 feet away from the right of way or that ditch on the side of the road, your beehive should be safe from the chemicals we're going to drop to control mosquitoes. That's another protective buffer. Also, when farmers are getting ready to drop their spray in the spring or on apple orchards or orchards up here in Northeast Ohio, then hey, that's another thing. Talk to the farmer. Okay, let's buffer it out. So where my beehives are going to sit in this area where your spray is not going to reach it. That's one thing. I can cover up my hives. So that all that helps. And finally, location. GIS is about geographic location. The bloom cycle. What's blooming around the hive? Where are the apiaries located? That goes back to proximity. And finally, record keeping. And I threw that under location because you can call it the attribute table, fill out all the information you need, which is basically this hive inspection sheet. And then on my tables, I actually have bloom records of what I see blooming around the hive. And I use Google, and I can use Esri. Actually, I like to use Esri software with a Google base map. It works out great. So let's go on to drones here. Oops. Yeah, not these drones. These guys keep trying to take things over. We want the nice little friendly drone. Here we go. So drones allow us to do vegetation assessment or analysis. So there is a nice, you can actually see some of the clover and dandelion blooms right there. This is what we want. Nice, ideal, healthy plants with blooms. This is an overshot of my farm that I'm putting back in operation. The camera shows that, and I think, hey, it looks pretty healthy. Whoa, wait a minute. The thermal image, remember, we want it all to be dark because dark means it's green and healthy. Look at all the bare spots I have showing up. The bright yellow rectangles are cars, so I don't count that. But we want to shoot, so now I have to think about how am I going to improve the area around me. And this carries over to farmers, beekeepers and farmers working together. Hey, before I put my hives out there, let's improve the health of the fields or a city park. So the cities now want bees in their parks to teach people about the interconnectivity of nature and how bees work. So what can we learn from these infrared photos? Well, we just had a touch. Again, this is where we get more interactive. Can everybody see the bright square yellow spot on the one beehive? It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. This was amazing to me because we were flying test footage with DRG pilots, and they turned the thermal cameras on, and they flew over my bee yard, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You're saying everything that's bright yellow is really hot. You go, yeah. Well, what's that bright yellow thing on my bees? I'm cooking my bees or something. That's not good because beekeepers are always worried about temperature in the hive. So here it is. Here's the actual photo to the right, and there's the infrared photo. The bright yellow square turns out to be a lid on the beehive. The other bright yellow spot turns out to be a cluster of bees in the beehive. What's going on? Well, I got a really damaged cover. I don't know how many people are beekeepers in the audience. You can flip your hands up for me. That would be great. But if you're a beekeeper, you're always going out and grabbing swarms. And sometimes you don't have time to really sit down and collect stuff. You just grab what's available because that swarm's out there that you saw in the opening slides. So in this case, I grabbed a couple boxes. I threw frames in there. I had a lid. I threw the lid on there. And I'm good to go. The swarm's happy. They're in there. But in hot weather, that damaged lid is attracting heat. Whereas on the right, if I have a properly maintained lid, in this case, it's new. I gave it some white paint. It reflects heat. So it keeps heat away from the bees and helps them regulate the temperature of the hive, which in turn makes it easier for them to make honey. And if you look at this photograph, you can see the bright yellow is the honeybees down there. What they're doing, that group of honeybees, is circulating the hot air out of the hive and cooler air into the hive, and it's going up the hive where the rest of the cluster is making honey. But notice that the nice new lid has a nice deep purple to it. And there's a ventilation thing that the bees also are at there, fanning air in and then out through that ventilated super, which has holes in the side of it. So the whole upper part of the hive is nice and cool, perfect for honey production. And the main thrust of the bees down here, they're moving this air out. So it's working. The new lid is reflecting heat, helping the bees maintain temperature. The ventilated super is helping the bees maintain temperature. And yes, I expect to see a hot spot down here. We have a whole bunch of bees. So the thermal picture is showing, and I just went over this slide in the previous slide. I now have scientific actual proof that ventilated supers are working, because that's a huge debate in beekeeping. Are the methods we're using helping with the bees? Are the areas that we're pollinating, are they healthier? Do I need to do something to the fields? Should I talk to the farmers about the fields? How can I improve not only the farmer's yield, but the honey yield and keep the bees healthier? And that's what all this new technology is allowing me to do. The nice gradual change from hot to cool, or actually from hot to warm to cool, that's what I want to see. I want to see the hot spots down here, because these are the brood chambers. So the young bees are being hatched and raised in a perfect environment for them. The honey production, the bees are evaporating the water out of the honey to make it into honey. And they need cooler areas. So the upper storage areas where the honey is, that's a honey super and that's a honey super. Nice and cool. The bees are able to move the water up and out of the hive. So this is what we want to see. And this is what you see in the hive over here. A nice cluster of bees at the front, a small cluster up here, nice cool area. The brood area is at the perfect temperature for the bees. As GIS professionals, we can help locate this hive on a premier habitat that they have plenty of resources to bring into the colony. As a drone person, a drone pilot, or a GIS person working with drone pilots, now you can show the beekeepers the health of the hive without ever having to open the hive up. You can get a quick picture of that. And at the same time, do a vegetation assessment to make sure that the area around the hive is healthy and providing the hive resources that it needs to grow and make honey. It all comes back to making honey. So I kind of sped things up, but we're 2 minutes short of time. So I have time if anybody wants to give me some questions. I'd like to say thank you for your time and attending this session. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Anybody has a question, please enter it into the chat room at the bottom. I know I have a question. John, I mean, I've always been interested in beekeeping. How long did it take you to kind of get started in that? I mean, it's not directly relevant to the GIS perspective, but they're very fascinating to me. How did you get, what course of action did you take to get, I mean, that's a pretty big operation you got going there for beekeeping purposes.
I started beekeeping when I was a child. My grandfather had bees. I got interested in bees. In fact, I got too interested in bees when I was a kid, threw rocks at a hive to try and trick the bees and leave them so I could see inside. By the way, it doesn't work. Developed a healthy respect for the anger bees. And then after my grandfather died, a beekeeper came and rented space from us. And that got me more interested in bees. And through him, I bought my first hive. I think I was around 4th grade. My dad and I got a hive from him and started beekeeping. Then I stopped when I went to college, and I came back into it in 2011 when my new wife went out and bought some honey from a store. I'm like, this is terrible. This isn't good honey. And she basically said, well, if you think you can do better, I said, well, I think I can, because I still have my old beekeeping stuff up in the barn. And I started with 1 hive, and the next thing I know, I'm up to 18 hives. So now I've been beekeeping, I guess you could say, as a sideline business now for, oh, wow, almost 10 years.
That's pretty awesome. So I got another quick question for you. Is it warm when you're covered with them? I mean, when you've got bees all over you, and does it like give you any insulation factor?
Yes, bees, a mass of bees are warm fuzzy.
That's awesome. So Charlene, did you have a question? Do you want to enter that into the, maybe I'm going to let you go ahead and ask you to unmute for just because I want to give you the opportunity to.
No, I just wanted to say it was a good information.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Woody? Well, all right. Well, Woody, we appreciate that. That was truly fascinating. That was a very interesting presentation, and we appreciate you coming out and talking to us today. So
Thank you. I appreciate you guys letting me come out and talk to you.
all right. All right. So everybody, let's not forget about the other things that we talked about, the map gallery. We're going to take a break for lunch now, I believe.